Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Trustees meeting to order on Tuesday, July 16th at 6 p.m. In order for everyone to hear all our enlightened discussions this evening, would you please turn off any cell phones or other noisemakers that you may have or put them on silent? Would you please join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Lino.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Berto.
Here.
Bell.
Here.
Duffy.
Here. Here.
And Kadanko is excused.
Approval of the agenda is published.
So moved. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes as published.
Motion to approve the minutes is published.
Second.
I think I had something. Page 6, line 15, just a typo, results should not be plural. And then, same page, line 31, where it talked about President Lino recused himself due to a potential conflict of interest. I think it should be stated as county board chair.
Yes.
That was all.
That's all. Anybody else?
Nope.
So all in favor of the amended minutes?
Aye.
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 Comments and correspondence. Is there anybody in the audience that'd like to make a comment about a non-agenda item? Once. Secondly will be correspondence. There's a number of correspondence items that we have received concerning the hearing, public hearing. So that correspondence issues will take place as part of the public hearing. If there's other correspondence anybody wants to add or is received that do not relate to that, then we'll continue.
There are 2 items of correspondence in your packet. One, a thank you from the Sister Bay Historical Society, and one, a letter from the town of Liberty Grove advising us of their members for the utilities.
New business. Item number 1, public hearing regarding special assessments for public improvements on Little Sister Road. Consider motion for action if appropriate. Before I open up for public hearing, anybody who wants to speak about the public hearing, we'd ask you to come forward, unless you can speak loud enough, come forward to the microphone, and we'd like you to state your name and your address, and then you're free to tell us what your opinion is, one way or another, or anything that you want to talk about concerning the special assessment and potential sewer and water extension, okay? I will not limit the time unless somebody goes way too long, so feel free to be comfortable and take whatever time you feel you need to state your position, okay? You'll also be given an opportunity after everybody else, once you've spoken, if you sit down and somebody else speaks, at the end of everybody having spoke at least once, who wants to speak, if you'd like to speak again or add something to it, you're welcome to do that at that point in time. Okay? So with that, I will open it up to public hearing for the sewer and water extension on Little Sister Road.
My name is Barbra Ziegler. I live at 10727 Little Sister Road, third house from the end. We bought the home 10 years ago. The city didn't provide water and sewer at that time. And our well didn't conform, and our holding tank was getting old and rotted. I spent $20,000 on a mound system and $10,000 for a new well. So I'm not very excited about spending $40,000 for the proposal you got after I got a very good operating system, which is 100% up to state regulations. It works perfectly. Also, to put in the proposed sewer, it would require a lot of digging up the middle of the road, which is basically a one-lane road around a curve, and it'd be very hard for people to get in and out. It would also damage environmentally the Niagara escarpment rocks, and it would require several trees to be cut down on people's property, putting the laterals in. All this to a huge amount of expense to what benefit I don't see. I'm adamantly opposed to it, and so much so if it passes, I might seek further action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler, I have a question for you.
Yes.
What year did you put in your new system?
We put in a well in 2011. We put in the mound system, that's the well then. We put in the mound system in 2014 or 15. I can't remember the exact year without looking it up, but because our holding tank was metal and it was starting to leak a little, and I wanted to be in compliance, so we spent our own money to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Ray Pelrine, husband of Martha Luber Pelrine, and we live at 10717 Little Sister Road. And certainly among the group that's here tonight, and I think maybe among, well, just about everybody, we're year-rounders, so we're sort of an oddity on the road as well. And I really want to thank you for giving us this chance to come and address you on this proposal. And I believe all of you have received from different routes, but emails and/or letters from all the folks with whom I'm connected, either as neighbors or as friends, the Lowies, the Hoffmans, the Lubers, the Zieglers, and all of us are opposed to this. We're opposed to it, and I think we represent, when you add all the bodies up and the properties up, a majority not only of the parcels and the people on the property, but in terms of the proposed assessment estimates, the vast majority of the costs would be borne by this group. It's my understanding that this process that we're in the midst of right now with this public hearing was started with the village by a request by two of the landowners to pursue it as an idea, not a firm request. And so it wasn't prompted by anybody in the community or by the village itself determining there was some environmental need or some economic need or some problem that needed fixing. Instead, it was two property owners said, would you look into this? And that's what you're in the midst of doing. And that since they made that request, again, if my understanding is correct, those two property owners have also expressed their opposition, and they don't want to have this done either. So what we've got is a bunch of folks for whom certainly it would be a benefit long-term to be on a municipal sewer and water system. But right now, in the absence of any failing systems, there aren't. And in the face of the extreme cost, just even looking at the assessments that you're proposing, not even getting into the fact that assessments are not the actual dollars when it comes down to a project going forward, and not even getting into what the individual landowners would each have to do, but knowing those would be substantial figures. This just seems to me to be a problem that I don't think the village really needs to get into, because it's a solution to a problem that right now there's no one really asking the village to do it. Of those that are the potential assessees, our rough arithmetic on the road right now is of I think there's maybe 15 or 16 parcels, at least 14 of us are opposed to it. We don't know what the other two are. So certainly you have the authority to go forward doing this. That's what village government is all about. You do things for the public good, but I don't really see the reason for it when we are all so opposed. And I haven't even touched yet on the substantial individual costs. I mean, this is a lot of dollars here. I'm married to a Luber. When you look at the project assessment, the single biggest family hit will be on the Luber family. The second biggest family hit will be on the Lowy family. And then when you throw the others in, they're all significant numbers. And again, I appreciate the effort you've gone into with the engineering study up to now, but I really hope you can see to conclude that however way it was motivated initially, the request to explore this as an option, that it should stop now. It really doesn't need to go forward anymore, and I think the village can better devote its time, its energies, and all of our tax dollars that we're paying in goodly amounts every year towards other worthy projects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, can I ask for some clarification on
Sure.
something that Mr. Pellerin stated? Is that too, that the original two property owners who requested this have changed their mind?
Will you speak up, please?
The question was, the original two property owners who asked to be looked into, do they now oppose it? We're asking for clarification that in fact they oppose it.
You have letters from both of them. One is my brother, Paul,
Paul.
who represents my mom, who has all the empty lots. And the other is Mike Hoffman, who is Mary Hoffman's son.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm Jim Steele, and I'm the trustee of the Carolyn Steele Family Trust, and we live at 10723 Little Sister Road, and I'm definitely opposed to this. I think I just put in a new holding tank recently and a new well, and I can't see any advantage to it other than a lot of cost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Allen. I'm Helen Lowy's daughter, and I'm here representing my brother Jay, sister Jody, and my mom, as well as myself. We've all talked about this. I believe you received a letter from, or an email from my brother, and he spoke to the administrator at length. Just a couple things we wanted to make note. I'm not going to repeat everything they said, but ditto on all that. But a couple things. One, our question to the board is, if you were in our position, how would you want the board to vote? The other is, if you do decide to move forward with it, our family really would be in a position where we would need to talk to our family real estate lawyer, because this would be a real hit on our family. And for how often we do pump the 2 tanks, we could pay for that forever and ever, you know, for a long, long time for what we'd have to pay for this. And the 2 parcels, as Jay pointed out across the street, we have no intention of ever developing, and that's quite a chunk for that, so.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kingsley Brown at 10275 Little Sister Road. I originally was in support of the idea. Certainly having sewer and water was a nice idea. I will have to replace my tank soon, and at some price it made good sense. When I saw the numbers of $40,000, it makes no sense. But then the question is raised, how does this compare to other projects that have been done? Is this way out of line, or is this normal for this sort of project? It seems very, very expensive. Is it the timing? Is it just the fact that we're on a difficult road, or why would it cost so much money? That's essentially the questions I've got. But I pretty much am with the group here now at this point. At $40,000, it makes no sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Going once? Yes. Sir.
Mine is more of a kind of a question. I'm Barbra Ziegler. I live at 10727 Little Sister Road. My concern, along with everybody else here, is pretty much the same. But I also wondered if, I didn't know if about the environmental impact. My husband Bob mentioned it. I just want to know more about that, if you have any information, anybody that could speak to that subject, because it is kind of a unique area, and there already have been roads built on what I guess is the Niagara Escarpment, but I'm just talking on behalf of that because I don't know what goes on in other parts of Door County as far as impacting the escarpment, which I think is extremely important these days to keep it safe. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Martha Luber, Pellerin, 10717 Little Sister Road. I just want to verify, you guys did get the letter from my brother, Paul Luber,
Yes?
and signed by my mom and Luber also, and the Mike Hoffman letter?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
And just so you know, they were responded back to that they had been received.
Yeah, they're,
So, yeah.
at least my brother is like on vacation far away, and
Yep.
I can't get a hold of him, so.
Yep. Anybody else? Okay, nobody else, I would close the public hearing at this point in time. And I would ask that, I'm sorry?
One more question.
Sure, go ahead.
So I gather this is not really put to a vote, it's a decision of the board. It's not majority ruling like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, at this point in time, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you for all your input. Thanks for coming. Thanks for showing up, expressing your opinion. Now I would like to turn it over to our administrative team to give us a background report on the project. But-
Before they do that, can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Sure.
If Paul Luber and Mike Hoffman were the two original requesters, and they are not here tonight to speak to face-to-face, do we know why they have changed their mind?
No, I don't. Well, we do have the letter from Paul.
Yeah, we have, the letter is basically the
Right.
information that we have.
Right. In the letters that we received is the information that they are opposed.
Okay, well, that was just handed out, so I guess I haven't
Correct.
read that one
Correct.
yet.
Right,
Okay.
right. I
The
understand.
cost, that was-
Right, I understand. So we're not going to read them now. Okay. But no, I understand. Okay. So what I'd like now is for the administrative team and engineering to explain what the process is, was, and what it may or may not be going forward.
I'm gonna turn it over to Mike Skeller, Utilities Director, and our Robert E. Lee, Engineer Services. They can probably give you better information on this.
Well, I won't waste a lot of time because I think everyone kind of knows what, how this started. Was two individuals came to me and said they wanted to put sewer and water to their homes. As being the utilities director, I felt it my duty to make sure if we're going to do this project, let's check with all the neighbors along the road. The last thing I wanted to do was make sewer and water for two homes, and then 2 years from now, people come and say, why didn't anybody tell us this was going to happen? And so that's why the survey was sent out to the individuals. We got our responses back. As far as why we're this far, the responses were many times interested in for than opposed. I think it was like 8-2. So then that just made the process continue on. And here we are. The two individuals now that have changed their mind, one has talked to me and is looking at some other options. As far as, I think, your name, sir?
Kingsley?
A person also has to look at these numbers, and Jared will speak a lot more to these numbers and how to handle it, things like that. These are estimates. This was not bid, or we're not there. It could be higher than this. It could be lower than this. This was just discussion numbers.
Are they in line? Are they in line with others?
Sure. To answer that question, what we do is we take other projects in the area and try to compare the costs. As Mike said, this is really high level. I mean, these are essentially no more than lines on an aerial saying, you know, this is the sewer route, this is the water route, these are the general lengths. No formal survey has been done. We don't necessarily know, you know, depth of bedrock, depth of water table, you know, other challenges that may come up. So what we try to do at the preliminary assessment standpoint, you know, as Mike said and as introduced, this is kind of the introductory stage of exploring whether or not this is a viable option or something that the village feels is valuable to the residents that it impacts. And by and large, understanding the fiscal component is really important. So what we try to do again is take into consideration our history being in town for I don't know, 30, 40 years, whatever those numbers are. It might go back longer. And saying, you know, what are those things that we have to deal with? And I think one of the gentlemen mentioned, you know, it's already a narrow road, it's already a narrow right of way, there's trees, all of those things factor into our cost consideration. And at this initial stage, we try to be conservative, so we try to err on the side of being a little bit higher. But there's so many unknowns that we just don't know. But we want to make sure that we're at least in line with approximate magnitude of what this may cost. With the hope that it ends up being less, because it's hard enough to see what the numbers are, and then if they come in double it after you've already committed a lot of dollars to, you know, engineering and design and bidding and things like that, then it's even harder to handle. So our goal is to be in line with cost without being grossly exaggerated.
This is not, at the moment, this is not. We will in a minute, okay.
So then I guess we can talk a little bit about the process. Very much early in the beginning of the process, and within the preliminary engineering report, there's basically a statute, Wisconsin statute, that's to be followed as far as the process of how this moves forward. Within that, there's opportunities and options relative to costs. You know, within the document that I believe is in the board packet, there's talks about, you know, this could be a one-time payment, this could be financed or held by the village and be paid in 10 annual installments or some fraction of that. There's other opportunities too, and it gets into more unique or more one-off scenarios where you have the opportunity to say, if you have installed a septic or a well within a period of time recently, that perhaps there's a credit back or a payback to that to help compensate for that recent improvement, knowing that by and large, the sewer and the water being public is a better system relative to potential problems. You know, rarely do mainline pipes leak. They're required to be inspected, whether it's on a 3-year or 5-year rotation. We know that it's being maintained by the village, who has the public's best interest in mind. Where if a septic tank or a holding tank fails, you know, that may be a direct conduit to sewage going into the water. So we know that sanitary sewer has its benefit to properties, to property value, to just the system by and large. With public water, you know, similar. It's a reliable source of clean water. It provides fire suppression and protection with hydrants. So there is the benefit to that end. There was some discussion about environmental impact of what we do from laying the pipe and putting the pipe in the ground. You know, anytime you get into bedrock, anytime you fracture that or you impact it to put utilities in, there are those potentials that it can change things. But all that goes back into the detailed design and saying, you know, how deep is bedrock? What are we doing to it? How do we react when we determine certain things? I think the height of the bay has opened eyes to what, you know, the power of water can do, and if there's groundwater in this scenario or water that's working its way back up the bedrock, you know, all of those go into how do we build this, how do we construct it, and then how do we deal with it so that it doesn't create a new problem that wasn't previously expected. Challenge with groundwater is that it's very unpredictable. It's really difficult to model. It's very challenging to know exactly what's going to happen when you go into the earth and you disturb it. But all of that, again, backs into sound engineering judgment and practice and, you know, history with similar projects and things of that nature. So all of that is considered as we get beyond this point. But again, we're at a really high level. We're at length of pipe, size of pipe type of stuff. We're not into any of those details. So that has to be worked out yet. Started touching a little bit on assessments and deferred assessments. You know, other opportunities too are you can make assessments due at the time of sale or development or subdivision. There's other communities that have done things like that. So there are some other opportunities to manage the costs, but almost all of those things, specifically deferred costs, are then borne by the village and by, you know, the general fund or available dollars within the levy, and are carried forward until the point at which they're paid and they're fulfilled. So it's not that they aren't costs, it's just that they have to be, they're unrealized until that point. So, you know, if you do a deferred process, that becomes a challenge relative to, you know, how do the finances of the village position and are you capable to absorb those? So those are all things that have to be discussed and have to be understood as you move forward. And What this does is it just gives us a magnitude of those dollars and what we're talking about and how it impacts each individual property owner, so they can voice their opinion and have these good discussions.
Is there any discussion within the statute or ordinances that require a certain level of property owner participation?
As far as, in order to implement, do you need 10% or 100%? I will confirm my answer. I don't believe so. I think ultimately the police power component of the statute gives the village the authority to do what they feel is in everyone's best interest as far as a whole. But I will confirm that and I will get back to you on that.
Okay. So last month, we were given information that a majority of the property owners were in favor of this. What I'd like to do is confirm where we're at now with that, for instance.
I would have to defer to, I guess, Bo, because some of these letters came in when I was out
Right,
for
exactly.
my surgery.
And understand, several of these letters came in, not all of us have had a chance to read them or understand them yet, okay? I know it was a little confusing when we got two letters from Paul Luber, for instance, one in support, one against,
Yeah.
okay? So, you know, obviously we'll confirm, you know, the information, but. Any other questions?
I just have,
Rob?
you mentioned, when you talked about the high level of this survey at this point, you mentioned other classifications or issues to deal with, such as depth of bedrock, et cetera. Also knowing the terrain in that area as well. If you just look at the visual of the area and your point about how depth of bedrock could impact cost, if you had to make a judgment, best case judgment as to whether you think the number would wind up being higher on the deep dive or lower, what would your best judgment be?
So you're asking me if I think the overall budget is in line, low or high?
The way I heard we tried to take into account whatever factors we do at a high level.
Correct.
We came up with a cost that we tried to make as close as possible to what we think it'll come into. But then you listed several things, including depth of bedrock.
Sure.
And the rest of us knowing what the terrain in that area is like. And me hearing it as a layperson not involved in the engineering specifics, that all sounds to me like if we had to go one way or the other as to do we think it'd be higher or lower than your number, I'd have to say I think the chance is greater that the number might even be higher, because if it's at such a high level, it seems like we've got serious things at play there that more likely than not would add not just difficulty or increased work to the job, but higher cost.
Correct. So within what's available to us are our contours, our, you know, the aerials, the imagery of it, our general knowledge of Sister Bay and the area. So our hope is that we're on the right magnitude. You know, if it's higher, hopefully it wouldn't be anything more than 10%, right? But there are a lot of variables, and the next step would be to try to vet these numbers better, would be to take a few soil probes, do a survey to make sure that our grades are consistent with what our expectations are. And it would be to, let's say, get to a 30% engineering plan and say, all right, now we know we're gonna run our sewer at 8 feet deep, or maybe we were thinking 10 feet. Rock's at 2 feet when we thought it was at 4 feet, or it's at 1 foot and, you know, it's really at 6, or, you know, all of those things. So before we would get way too far down the line, we would go through that preliminary engineering stage and then revisit our cost estimate and say, does this still make sense? When I look at the costs per foot of the main line, you know, this is taking into consideration the fact that there's going to be rock, or there's going to be challenges in the construction process, whether that be groundwater, soils, rock, pavement restoration, things like that. But they're not extreme. I mean, we've seen them higher than this. But again, trying to take that judgment and trying to take that history into consideration.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So this started out as a request to our utilities director, and I think utilities started talking about it a couple of months ago. And then there were letters sent out seeing if there was interest, and there was overwhelmingly interest, and so the village still continued. I'm just curious, do we have some kind of tally on what this has cost the village so far?
I do
Between
not.
Mike's time and Robert E. Lee's?
I do not.
And my other question is, somebody who spoke said that he had a tank that was leaking and had to replace it in the past, and then somebody else stated that he probably has to replace a tank in the near future. How often are those tanks inspected?
I believe the septic tanks, the county requires that they're inspected and pumped out every 3 years.
3 years.
If they're holding tanks, well, to be honest with you, I don't know the time frame on inspecting holding tanks.
Okay.
I can find that out.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I have nothing. Okay. So, I don't want to disappoint anybody, but because we all received other information tonight that we haven't had a chance to go through, what I'd propose is we table it till we have a chance to take a look at and read the information. I'd also like to maybe send letters again, or do a survey again to see where we are on the number of property owners, which has probably changed. And then we will take it up at the next meeting, the next board meeting.
Is it possible when we send those letters out again, that we can mention in there, one of the reasons for doing is that initially we heard so many people interested, but after the public hearing, we're hearing so many people not interested?
We'll come up with the appropriate letter to,
I think we almost all know anyway.
yeah.
We're talking about two people that aren't here.
I can explain my brother's change, what.
Okay, when I read the letter, I think I read his letter, okay, I think the letter explains to me why he changed.
But your board member must not have seen the letters.
Okay, all of us haven't seen the letters yet. Some of us just received them tonight. That's why I'm saying we're gonna not do a vote tonight. Some of them just got the information tonight when they came in and sat down. So it's appropriate that everybody be able to look at all the information before we have further discussion and vote on it. Like I said, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to disappoint you, but everybody needs to have the same information.
So we'll have to drive back into town if we're not here. If there's something other meeting.
Potentially, yes, sorry. Right.
But just on your discussion of the new survey potentially, his point is well taken. All property owners, save two, are here, or voices from all of them, and we're all opposed. So, you know, at most there'll be 2 in favor and the rest are opposed. And if you look at all those that are opposed to it, the relative costs being borne by those opposed, the vast majority of the assessed things are opposed. So I recognize, and Ms. Berto, you were looking at the cost already to the village of having to investigate this. It's going to be an additional cost if you send out another survey. I really don't see what a survey is going to accomplish, but
Well, I think I should, the emails and the correspondence that was here waiting for me when I arrived at 10 to 7, that I should have the opportunity to review that, so I do have all the knowledge, no matter whether the president or the clerk or you tell me what's in those letters, I should read them for myself before I vote.
I do want to make one point though, and that's because we did go and talk to them, sorry, I don't remember your name, when we were up here, and the survey that was initially sent out, because my brother did respond that yes, but it was phrased, did we want to know more information? Yeah, we wanted to know more information in order to make a well-informed decision. Once the cost came out, but it was also explained to us at the village administration building that it was a non-binding survey. I mean, if we said, yes, we wanted more information, that in no way was binding at all to whether or not this moved forward. And the other thing, and I don't know the answer to it because I'm not a Luber, but really grateful for that usually, but no. But anyway, yes, you might have gotten two things from Paul, one in favor, one not. But was the one where he was in favor at first was, yes, they had a situation where they wanted to know, is sewer an option? And once you get the numbers, you realize, well, no, at those costs, I'm not in favor. So for me, one is informed, wanting more information, and then the other, no, once we get the numbers, you know, and the other point I just want to make is, you look at your map, half of the properties across the street, they're not developed, and they're not gonna be developed, you know, and so for me, you're really talking just about the homes on one side of the road, and there's an awful lot of cost. I know my family, it's $75,000 for 2 lots with no intention of developing them. You know, to be honest, it was more of a protection from other development, so.
Paul, my brother Paul and Mike Hoffman's intent, there's an odd situation on the Hoffman-Luber property where they share a well, and there's a lower tank with a lift station that pumps the sewage up to a holding tank on the far side of Little Sister Road, and that's pretty close to the the Frickman property where the sewer ends. And their original intent for bringing this up was like, wow, we could just run a pipe, whatever it is, 30 yards down the road and hook up to the sewer, and it would be so easy. And that's what they're thinking. And that's why they inquired about this and why they were originally a yes. And then they're looking at, I mean, for my mom's lots across the road, it's almost $200,000. Those lots have no buildings.
Okay, I'm not trying to cut you off.
And that's why
But we've already had the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay, I understand, we've already had the public hearing. You have to allow us our time that we feel we need to evaluate all the information. As I said, several of the members, even though they're just a couple letters, did not have time. They were given letters when they came in and sat down, to sit down and look at it and formulate their opinion. At the next board meeting, it'll be back on the agenda for a decision. But thank you all for coming, thank you all for your input.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Tasha? If you can get me those numbers within a 10-minute time frame before next month's meeting, I would appreciate that. If it's going to take you longer than that,
Don't bother.
don't bother.
Okay,
Right.
I'll give you what I have, how was that?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
74 hours, right?
Okay, item number 2, discussion regarding notification of intent to file an application. Consider motion for action if appropriate. The Village of Sister Bay has filed an application for financial assistance with the USDA Rural Development for a sewer wastewater treatment plant improvement construction project. The Village of Sister Bay has applied for approximately $5,100,000 in financial assistance. The application for this project is available at Sister Bay Village Administration Office, 2383 Maple Drive, Sister Bay, Wisconsin.
So with the wastewater treatment plant project that we have that we are moving forward with, we've applied for both funding and a grant with the USDA Rural Development. The total of $5,100,000 is up a little bit from what we've talked about, I guess, in utilities meetings and what we've talked about before in the engineering report of $4.9 million. This new total takes into account interest, bond counsel, legal fees, and interim financing costs. So that's where we get that extra $200,000 or so. The grant included financial information, the general fund information, and was actual information as of 4/30. That's in your packet. If you have any questions, I can go through that information. The estimates were for 2022. We had to provide estimates for 1 year after the completion of the project, so that would be 2022. So we've included some estimates in there for cost increases and that kind of thing. Just kind of what we do with regular budgeting. So, there was also a list of all short-lived assets of anything over $5,000 that is under a 15-year expected life. I don't know if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, there was a lot of information included in there from the engineers. So Josh Steffick from Robert E. Lee has been working a lot of hours on this, has put a lot of time into it as well, so. We are hopeful that we will get grant funding from the USDA. There was discussion that the grant funding could be close to $1 million, which would be great. In order to make this grant worth it, I guess, for the village, we would have to receive grant funding of about $550,000. That's kind of what I call our break-even point. Otherwise, it would make more sense to go with the DNR's Clean Water Fund Loan Program. So if we don't receive enough grant funding with this, we would probably move towards the Clean Water Fund Program, and that has an October 1st deadline to file. So we can't do that. We would be out cost of about $7,500, and that's just the cost of engineering and time that we all put into doing this grant, but we thought a gamble for $1 million was worth it.
Do we know what the expected date of award would be?
We should hear in early August what the award would be.
So that wouldn't preclude the DNR one?
Right,
Okay.
right,
Timing is right.
right. The timing worked out well, so.
Okay.
And the purpose of this as a, public comment is in case the public had any questions about it. This is a requirement of the USDA, so. I believe Denise had some questions at the Utilities Committee. Did you get your questions answered, or would you like me to answer them?
They were typewritten here for me.
Perfect.
Is that
That was very thorough, Bo.
Is that $550,000 based on like administrative overhead? I know whenever dealing with USDA for these rural programs, it's a massive burden.
Yeah, it is a massive burden. It does not take into account administrative overhead. We're strictly looking at the interest rate cost and the cost for the two programs, so.
Is the DNR any,
The DNR is easier the DNR grant would be easier to manage, but there would be no grant from the DNR that we would be expecting. It would be all loan funded.
So on the USDA grant piece, we're hopeful for $1 million. Could it be more?
It could be up to 25%. So that would be, a little over $1 million.
It's worth a shot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we thought if we could get $1 million, that would be fantastic. And I guess then we would just take the burden of dealing with the USDA on for this project.
Is
I
this
think
the
it's
one that we-
worth considering the expense of dealing with that, because that is not insignificant over the life of this.
Right,
It's, free money isn't free.
right.
Yeah.
No, I think we understand that. I think the thought process that Mike and I had was that the option to take this off the backs of the ratepayers was something that we needed to shoot for. Because this is gonna be a significant cost increase for the ratepayers, and it's gonna be a significant cost increase quickly, so.
And by filing, we find out what it is, we could,
Right.
if for some reason it's 300,000, say thanks but no thanks, and go
Right.
the other route.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we put it in, see what happens, and make a decision from there.
Right, we would then just withdraw our application.
I guess what I'm saying is we shouldn't just look at the interest savings at that $550,000 mark. We should look at the total cost of this over the lifetime when we look at that. Because maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but if we're just looking at the interest, we're not looking at the full cost of that.
Yeah.
And can you specify what that is, Nate? I mean, if you have
You've got a lot of
experience-
reporting requirements,
Okay,
Yeah.
reporting,
a lot of reporting
quarterly,
requirements.
annually, do we know?
There are some reporting requirements that are, throughout the course of the project, there's a number of things that have to happen, as well as some follow-up. There would be some cost to the fire station simply to put in ADA compliant door opening and that kind of thing, that we could roll into the cost of the project. So, I guess we really believe that this was, regardless of the administrative burden, that this was a chance that we had to take. There isn't
And
a
we can
lot of
still
other
choose
grant
later.
funding.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, we can weigh the options at the time.
We gotta see what they're gonna offer.
I think we
guess
have
I'm
to
just-
see what they're gonna offer.
We have to be cautious when,
Right.
if they come back at $575,000.
Right.
I bet it's not worth it if we look
Right,
at the
I-
big picture.
Yeah, I would agree with you that then we have to really evaluate whether this is worth moving forward.
And let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we need a motion, is that what you're asking for?
No, we don't need a
We don't
motion.
Okay, only because it said consider a motion.
Oh, doesn't necessarily need to say that, sorry.
Okay, all right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Item number 3, presentation by Jim of the Door County Economic Development Corp. regarding potential submission of an application for Wisconsin Economic Development Corp. Community Development Investment Grant on behalf of Door Hotel, Inc., and discussion regarding passage and adoption of Resolution 406-071619, which authorizes submission of that grant application for purpose of redeveloping the Sister Bay Marketplace property, which is located at 2329 Mill Road. Consider motion for action if appropriate.
Good evening. I'm Jim Schuessler, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director for Team DCEDC, Door County Economic Development. And just a note, I really want to congratulate you on all the vibrancy of this community. It's thrilling to experience it, and I know that it's really been worked at to make this stuff happen. As I've been researching this particular project we're working on, I'm going through a lot of articles from about 10 years ago with the Pulse and the development of TID 1, and it was very courageous, and we're seeing some really positive results from that investment. In order to help this project go forward, and what we look at Door County Economic Development is opportunities that might help address gaps in financing decks to make projects go, and this is a big project, the Door Hotel project. So the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation has something called a Community Development Investment Grant. So whenever I use CDI in this presentation, and it's a brief presentation, I'm referring to the Community Development Investment Grant, a grant that comes directly from the WEDC. So I just want to do a brief introduction to what the grant is about. Its objective is really focused on supporting local development and helping transform communities. And the way it works is, and one thing I want to emphasize is it has a rural focus. Door County matches that rural focus, so that's good news for us. The Village of Sister Bay matches that rural focus. They're looking for shovel-ready projects, so these aren't things on the boards for 3 to 5 years from now. And they're also looking for downtown community-driven efforts. And so when I look back at the development of TID 1, I see that emphasis and that desire to have that take place. As far as the requirements, what WEDC is looking for is job growth, enhancement of property values. In this case, it would certainly help enhance the investment into TID 1, and other leverage investment by local and private partners. And this particular proposal is really totally financed by the private sector, aside from this grant that is in a way designed to help kind of address some of the issues that came up through the changes in the design of the building. This is what WDC is looking for with the CDI to be eligible. You've got to be a rural county, we'll check. Door County matches that requirement. Municipalities actually have to apply on behalf of the recipient. So that does not mean that the village is taking on any obligation. But what it says is, yep, they're applying for this, and we are supportive of this project, and they're applying for this. It requires a minimum 3-to-1 match for the project cost. This one is a 32-to-1, so it certainly hits it very, very well. And then no more than 30% of the match can consist of state and federal grant resources. This would be the only grant resource in the entire project, meaning a little over 3% of this project, so well under the 30%. Municipalities are the recipient, and actually, as I said, they're the ones saying, yep, we support this. Here are restrictions they put on it. The applicants must have a signed resolution, and that's what we're asking for this evening, is supporting the developer seeking this CDI grant. Generally, know this, that a municipality can only receive one per year. There have been exceptions to the rule on this. I served, before I came to Door County, I served in Sheboygan County, and I had 3 actually projects using CDI at one time. So here are the eligible projects that even qualify for CDI. And I share all of this because it might stimulate some other ideas you might have. But renovation, historic preservation, demolition, new construction, infrastructure development, or planning, and this is new construction that's being proposed. So the eligible projects under a CDI would create a development of a significant destination attraction. Certainly the door would be a significant destination attraction. Rehabilitation and reuse, infill development, historic preservation, infrastructure efforts, and mixed use. So certainly we hit it on both destination attractions, infill development, and I would also say that this will certainly stimulate additional mixed-use development when you look at the overall big picture. WEDC, which is the one that ultimately considers whether or not this developer receives this grant, looks at the impact on the community, the financial justification. In this case, we definitely saw some things in planning that did cause some increase in costs, and it's a beautiful plan. As a result of the changes that came through Planning Commission, it really enhanced the plan. Previous planning efforts, you know, the vision of TID 1, readiness to proceed, and they are certainly ready to proceed, or nearly ready to proceed. Involvement of public, private, and DCEDC. Our board certainly enthusiastically supports this concept for the village of Sister Bay, if Sister Bay enables us to go forward, and of course other factors, and I'm not quite sure what other factors mean, but we hit everything on the punch card as far as what WEDC is looking for. So the grants are limited to 25% of the eligible project costs with a maximum grant of $250,000, and at least 50% of the funds are to be awarded to communities and municipal counties. And we are, again, a rural county. Door County is a rural county. The expected outcomes that WEDC had when they developed the CDI grant was to assist 12 communities and achieve 22-to-1 leverage. And again, this is a 32-to-1 leverage. So this actually helps them bring up their average overall. Give you a few, and then performance reporting. And as Nate says, free money's not entirely free, so there's a semi-annual report that does go to the WEDC. It's post also, so it determines that the capital investment actually did take place. And so we're certainly hitting all the marks that they're looking for there. I just want to give you a few examples of projects that have been enhanced with the CDI. As I mentioned, I served previous in Sheboygan County, and in Plymouth, we took a building back in back taxes with the county. The county gifted the building to the city gifted the building to Sheboygan County Economic Development. We get a CDI grant, and that, and along with a lot of other investment, left that building on the right. So before on the left, and after on the right. Also in downtown Sheboygan, Bonton went out of business, Yonkers, Boston Store, and left their downtown area with a big hole in it, and that developed into a mixed-use development that also included this outdoor amphitheater. And the third example is a bullseye for what's being proposed with the doors over in Prairie du Chien, is using a CDI to help make that project go. But I certainly welcome any questions that you have, and then of course Chris, the developer, is here to take on any questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Questions?
Jim, I got a couple questions for you. My first question in general would be, I know we've seen your presentations in the developing affordable housing situation. It doesn't appear to be now, but I'm just wondering if you have any plans to create some linkage with grants like this to affordable housing requirements. In other words, which relates to a couple of my other questions coming, but if we're going to have an X number of year-round jobs created by this business receiving this grant, the likelihood of those being able to be filled by year-round residents might not be great if they don't have anywhere to live. And if, in the future, if not necessarily in this particular grant, if you're giving considerable amount of money for the development of this, would you ever consider some linkage there so that, you know, if you're gonna have 3 jobs at a salary level that come close to, but not quite close enough to providing somebody the opportunity to take them because they can't afford to live here, that is part of the equation.
Northern Door, as you know, showed up with the need of 140 affordable housing units. That we've got a big gap behind us, and we're already in that next period where we have need. The CDI doesn't work perfectly with that concept. It can't be solely for housing, for example. But I will tell you there's a project in another municipality that I do have it. I'm trying to figure out, it's the West Side School Project, which goes to Planning Commission tomorrow night, and trying to figure out if I can kind of make that work in there, but we pretty much have figured out our financing deck. This particular fund really isn't tuned into housing, but weed tax credits are, and so we're working very closely with them. The other way that we're looking at Northern Door, and I hope I'm getting to the heart of your question, is that, you know, I don't think that it fits the rural nature of our communities to see like a 40 or 60 unit development. And so what we're looking for is the development of smaller developments throughout our communities in Northern Door County. And so it's, you know, we have to work on multiple things at one time, and so that's definitely front burner with us as it relates to attainable housing. Doesn't work so well with this particular grant, this particular project.
So in your letter that we have a copy of, your letter to Chris, where you mentioned that the project is projected to provide a significant number of year-round job opportunities, what is that number?
I believe that the number is starting out at 8. I think the letter may say that actually full-time. There was a range in there.
15 full-time equivalent positions.
Okay.
But
I've updated that letter, just so you know, and so I think it started at 7 with a possibility over, you know, a horizon of multiple years to go up to 15 full-time equivalent positions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Is there a time limit on this?
If this is approved now, the financing, the funding is available now. They take these applications on, so we're not running up against a window or anything like that. But it would fall within what Chris's development timeline is.
Okay.
If he doesn't develop within that window, it's gone. So I think the clear answer is he can apply for this any time, but he can't do it 3 years from now if he's not ready to go now.
Okay, very good, thank you.
So then it sounds like the reason this wasn't applied for a year ago and it's already built and running is because the changes in design to the project and the gaps in the financing basically just developed to the point of where we went down this road, or?
I think it's because those 2 guys didn't meet.
Yeah. The story is that Chris came to our annual meeting on April 24th, and after the meeting, he says, "I see you're really busy, but now I hear and I understand what you do, and we need to have a meeting." So we had that meeting, and then he was not familiar with the CDI. It's our responsibility to be familiar with these things, and we have resources at WEDC that help. I've got somebody from WEDC coming in tomorrow, meeting with multiple businesses throughout the county on projects, but that's how that happened at that point. Okay. And it certainly did, and I'm not here to complain about the work of Planning Commission. I applaud the beautiful result of what they did, but it did add significant cost to the project, so this is kind of helping take some of the bite out of that. Not all of it, but some.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Somebody care to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion regarding Resolution 403-071619, which allows formal amendment of the condominium plat for Mariners Point Development in such fashion that proposed Building 1 and proposed Building 12 are converted from duplexes to 3 single-family homes. Consider motion for action if appropriate.
Before you get into this, can I say something?
Please, I was going to ask.
Okay. This has not gone before Plan Commission. And Bo and Janelle and I had a conference call the other day, and because of timing, they asked if it would be okay if the board decide this issue and bring the Plan Commission in after the fact and give them an FYI. And I guess reluctantly, I said yes.
Okay, so.
And I directed Bo and Janelle to speak to you
Okay.
first,
Yeah.
before it got on the agenda, so.
So basically, the background on this is the developer came to us with 4 homes for the site. It's on the southern end of the property, and I'm just gonna go to my map here. And it was approved in the zoning commission for the 4 properties per the utilities approval with the easement in place, and that was the issue. So we met with the developer and with the utilities and with Lee Novak, our engineer, and we came to the agreement that it wouldn't work with the 4 homes. So with the developer.
Due to easement issues.
Due to the easement issues, it would have been too tight of a fit, we couldn't come to an agreement, and if you wanna add in.
Good evening, I'm the developer guy.
You wanna jump up to the mic?
Sure. Didn't really have a problem with the easement. I knew that was coming. The sewer and water plan illustrated a 30-foot easement for the municipal laterals. Where the surprise came is when I was presented with the easement document itself, language was added to also put in a setback requirement on top of the 30-foot easement. That essentially made the no-build zone 50 feet wide, right up the middle of the concerned property. I couldn't handle that in terms of positioning, and we determined that 3 of the 4 buildings were going to encroach on the setback requirement. So thus, scrapped 1 building. I already have private lines stubbed out, or the previous developer did that, where I could surface 1 of the buildings, and then we would put private lines in for the other 2 buildings and do away with the municipal laterals and thus eliminate the need for the easement, the setback, et cetera. So we're gonna have 1 less building, a lot more green space, and continue on.
So this is all from a timing perspective. We wanted to get Mr. Tooney on the board so we can get this approved, and then we can take it to Plan Commission and have them review with the new changes.
Okay.
Sounds fine to me. Make that motion.
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you. In light of the board's approval, can I request an early start, or does that have to go through Denise's committee?
That would be.
We have bad experiences with early start, don't we?
We do. But you can certainly talk to Denise's committee.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I guess I would, put my reputation, if you will. I think you're familiar with my development up there. We've done 10 units already. These are the last 3. I don't think you've had to chase me for anything and that sort of stuff. We did submit plans 3 weeks ago or so for review in hopes that we could get ahead of the game. I'm not sure where that.
For state-approved plans, are you referring?
Yeah, building plans for permits, yes.
You'll have to take it to Plan Commission. We can't give you that authority.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Review of the financial statements, consideration of a motion to approve the monthly bills.
So-
There are none.
There are none.
So the monthly bills are not included in the packet. I was on vacation, and.
So we didn't spend any money this month.
Wonderful.
So we will include June and July together on the August.
Okay.
Report on county activities. Again, we're 1 week behind the county board. County board will actually be next week. Today was the admin committee, so we continue to start to work on budgets. Next month, we'll look at position summaries and new personnel potential positions. We also were given an overview of the EMS request for qualifications. There were 2 companies that responded. So we'll continue to look at that. It'll go to the Emergency Services Committee, Public Service Committee to review. And we hope in the next month or 2 for it to come back to admin for us to decide, okay, what do we do? And then go from there. So we just got preliminary information. But there are 2 companies that have responded.
I got one question on page 105.
Yeah. Wait, we're not there.
I thought we were on report by the village administrator, page
County
104.
supervisor.
County administrator.
Sorry, Dave.
That's right.
I thought you were done with, sorry.
Any questions? If not, we're done. Okay, go ahead, Rob.
On page 105 in the packet, Danny's facility manager report, at the end of his note, it says, "We are installing a new slab by the old Shopko for a memorial bench." Do we know what that memorial bench is for?
It's the one that was there. They're just, I think, replacing it.
So it's
The
still in
slab.
honor of whoever, we're not putting in a memorial bench for Shopko?
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure, it sounds like,
No.
we're putting in a memorial bench at the old Shopko in honor of Shopko. I just want to make sure that wasn't.
By the old Shopko, not
Okay.
for the old Shopko.
Just wanted to make sure, because I didn't see the Helms bench anywhere. I would like to sit on that
I
one.
can tell forever that's gonna be called Shopko. Any other questions on his?
Restrooms are still, completion date July 23rd?
Yes, he made some significant movements in the last week on that.
Okay.
And I've been in discussions with him, he's firm on the 23rd.
Excellent.
Wow.
Because for
Yeah.
a while, it
You got
looked
it.
pretty,
Pretty scary.
That'll be impressive.
Yes, yes,
a crew of
I was
50
over there
will show
today.
up.
yes.
But it's funny, because I'd see crews show up, and they'd be there 2 or 3 days, they'd get a lot done,
Yeah,
and then break away, and so.
So, we're working with him on that, and staying on top of things there. And then, anyone have any other questions?
Any update on the excess water issue?
The ramps look good.
Yep, the ramps were in, we saw that. They're doing well, I think they're holding up. Mike and I are still trying to figure out a plan for a long-term solution. That's something we want to get done as soon as possible. We're just waiting on more information from our engineers.
I do have one request, though. When we met at Parks and talked about this, it's my understanding that the boathouse, before the ramps were installed, were scrubbing the algae or whatever it was that you wanted to call it as soon as they saw it or whatever. But I don't know that that is happening on the properties south. And it actually goes all the way into Casperson's Drive. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't, ask the other property owner, because her water is going one way, boathouse is going the other way.
She was out there this weekend.
Yep, and
Scrubbing?
she came in
Okay.
today, and I talked to her. We talked
Because
with Karen.
the other day when I passed it, it looked pretty,
Yeah.
She's aware of
Yeah,
it. and we're all-
it was
I think
getting
we're
bad,
all
and
aware
then
of it.
I saw her this weekend out there on Saturday or Sunday.
okay, good.
Yeah, she's working on it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our parks guys have been informed of that too, and have been asked to pay attention as well,
Okay.
and help out when needed.
So, and whether it's on the list or whatever else, just as an FYI, I mean, we've got the barricades up that everybody chooses to go around to on the
Right.
swim dock, when we're talking about high water.
Yeah.
And it's not so bad on the flat part, I'm told, I'm not out there walking, but there's, the main dock, and then the new part, it goes up. Well, that piece that it's
It's-
at
that's
an
slick
angle,
as well.
that's very slick.
Okay.
I've seen somebody fall already.
Okay.
So if there was just in the area of the angle, I don't know if that's something could be swept, power washed, you know, it's not
Roughed
under
up.
much water right there, right,
We
but
can work
that's
on that.
Yeah, we can.
just that one part, not the whole thing.
Okay.
Would be-
Would it help if hose was ran further so that water went right into the bay?
Oh, and so I'm not talking about in front of the boathouse, although I have seen people
Well, I
slip
was
and I got
thinking
myself all
village
full of mud because I was avoiding people and all the grass right there is all mud, but we now have a sinkhole starting.
Where?
So, where that water diverts across the parking area for the boathouse. Asphalt meets the concrete sidewalk where the grass is. And it's been running across the grass onto the sidewalk and then down into the bay. There is now big enough to put a baseball just straight through, and you can see larger rocks, and it's significantly worse than a week ago. I mean, it was just starting, and now it is, you put your fist down in there. So if we, I don't know what's gonna happen with it, but it's not gonna get better, you know,
We
and
need
so I'm a
longer
little
hose
concerned that,
probably to say.
yeah.
Put longer, if they don't wanna put pipe, put longer hose so that, cause it's going in the bay anyway.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
there's
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
wrong with it going in the bay, so why not just run it into the bay?
Right.
Put a barricade so nobody trips on the hose.
I mean, it could be a hose that a car could run over because Scott does park there for the boathouse.
Right, but he could run over
Yes,
the
yes.
fire hose.
But that would,
there. And we have plenty of hose
yeah,
at the utilities that they can take for the village.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions on that?
Oh, I was thinking with the boathouse, somebody said at one point that the new marine, the condos across from the marina, they were gonna, their water's tying into the stormwater under the sidewalk. And I thought at some point the boathouse, once they were far enough along, was gonna be able to connect in to theirs, no?
I don't think they could make a deal, is that what I heard?
Oh,
Well, yeah, I guess there's a couple, are we talking with their neighbors?
right, well, you know, so then, you know, right, the new condos that were built, apparently they were putting in stormwater under the sidewalk.
Well, no, theirs actually goes out behind the back and comes out on Sunset. There's a whole
Oh,
system put in, they
okay.
have a pump in there.
Got it, okay.
So,
But at
Oh,
some
and I-
point, the idea was to get the boathouse to go into that, or no?
well, there was discussion, I wish Chris was still here, there was discussion between Chris, Al, and myself, and it was, they have an association there now,
Yeah.
is what I was told. And so that it would be up to that association whether they would allow the boathouse water to go in there. Because questions came up right away about, they have a pump, they're gonna have to run, pay electricity for it,
Sure.
and how that would all work out. And Bo and I, we had kind of talked about this a little bit, and that's what we're still kind of working on, if neighbors could make a deal.
Yep.
And at least get rid of the boathouse's water.
Yep,
Um,
yeah.
So
yeah.
that's.
I mean, right now with the ramps, it's pretty good. I'm a little concerned about winter. You know, all of a sudden, you
yeah.
got stuff freezing and thawing and,
We're trying to work on this so that we don't have to deal with that.
yeah.
And Mike and I are gonna try and get that together
Okay.
pretty quickly.
Well, if they're pumping out to Sunset, where's it going to Sunset? It's going to stormwater?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
through the vortex in the park.
Right,
Okay.
in the
Now
bay,
into
so
the
it's
bay.
not on the road.
So it's going into the system?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Do we have any forecast at this point for the purported peak of water level first week in August? Is about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I heard various.
They're saying September now.
Okay.
Okay, because I heard 3 or 4 weeks ago,
That's what I
people were
heard.
still saying it was forecasted to be 6 to 8 inches higher by then.
There's a report released by the Army Corps of Engineers every Friday morning. If you search Lake Michigan water level, you'll see it on there, and I tell you what's going on.
Do you check it every Friday? Nick?
Yes, I do.
So what are they looking at in September?
They're still forecasting, I think, 2 inches up by this time in August, which usually it's starting to come down.
Right.
But it's still not going to come down anywhere where it needs to be to stop the
No,
water?
No.
exactly, right.
That's going to
No,
be years.
Right.
Well,
right.
from my understanding, one of the previous owners of that property and building was John Canavy, when he had Canavy's Kitchen. And in 1986, when the water was also this high, he said it lasted 4 years.
Hmm.
So,
And how did they deal with it in the winter?
Well,
I didn't have
see, it
the
went- it
personal
went back,
conversation,
right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It went behind.
When we redid the road, we took the pipe that was behind, that was falling apart wherever else, and kind of abandoned it, and so the water used to go back, and now it's coming forward, and if they don't have lines going into the system.
There's just no way they can pump it out that way in the winter. It's, just won't work.
Well, you have neighbors that complain because you had the condominiums behind there saying, you know, you're not filling our yard up with your water. Because it
Right.
does fill their yard, it floods their yard. You gotta
Right.
walk in 6 inches of water.
And you can't blame them.
No,
No.
no.
So at the August meeting, we're gonna have that on the agenda. Bo and I will talk some more because we still have the easements back through there.
Right.
So I would suggest we don't give up any more easements
Right.
until we,
So do we have an easement enough for the boathouse?
right there we do.
Okay.
There's only been, I think, 2 easements given up. One was on the Casperson property and one was,
Pipka's property, right?
Oh,
correct.
okay, so then Hanukkah and the boathouse, we could,
Yes.
okay, all right.
Okay.
And both of them are also thinking about filling in their basements.
Really?
Yeah, they talked about that at Parks.
Then what?
It's gonna go
They don't
somewhere
have
else.
Then it comes up out of the
That's somewhere.
asphalt in the middle of the road.
Well, that's, you know, how are you gonna fill it, because, you know, it goes somewhere, okay.
Okay, we'll go to committee reports. Administrative has not met. Admin and oversight has not met. Communication technology.
Should we
not
start
met.
with the other one that's not on our list yet, alphabetically, ad hoc ice rink?
Oh, we just got minutes for that. Okay, sure. Ad hoc ice rink.
See, that's first in our packet.
Ad hoc ice rink met, and the minutes in the packet are self-explanatory.
I was pretty impressed just by the minutes of the conversation, the ideas, the pros, the cons, the whatever. Good
Agree.
group of people, really impressed.
Good thoughts there.
Yep.
Coastal byways.
The Pulse and the paperboard distributors have begun fixing the problem that I mentioned about no coastal byway brochures in any of the racks. That is being rectified. And then our meeting is tomorrow, so.
DCECD.
Yeah, Rob, I don't have any. I've never had any.
Yeah, no, nobody's, they basically don't really know why no one had any, but they've gone around and given over 90 places brochures and
Okay.
are gonna try and figure out how to spread them around.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never had them either.
Yep. DCEDC.
I didn't make it to the meeting, but I do know that one of the big things we're talking about this month is trying to work with the county on the communications tower ordinance. I've been talking to Jim about that a little bit. So there's another DCEDC committee that's meeting this week on that. So we're hoping the county will be more reasonable.
The county's not being reasonable?
No.
Okay. Economic development has not met. Finance, near
Going to be
future.
meeting at the end of the month?
Fire,
We had a meeting May 15th. Do we have anything in? May 15th, just a standard meeting. Annual fire department report was passed out by Chris. Some update on rescue replacement equipment. And the resolution we saw last month at our meeting, that was discussed at the May meeting. June meeting. Update on the rescue replacement update. That's the truck we have coming next year. This is the second year of going through the budget process. And that was about it.
Historical Society. I know the Fire District Exploratory has not met. So.
That has not met, yes. The June meeting minutes are in the packet. Does anybody have any questions on that? And July meeting, new officers elected. Fred Johnson continues as president, Pat Wisner is secretary, and Kathy Mangan as the treasurer, pretty much the same as this year's. Have a garden walk coming up, ice cream social, and discussion on the volunteer program. They're trying to get some documentation together so that everybody's on the same page with the volunteers that they get.
Holiday lighting has not met. Library building.
June transactional activity at the library higher than Bailey's Harbor, Egg Harbor, and Fish Creek combined. The other number that's very impressive to the librarian is the fact that for the first time ever, a monthly transactional activity at our library is more than half of the transactional activity in Sturgeon Bay. Lou from Liberty Grove announced that the town is setting up a 5-year reserve fund for long-term plan library expenses. He said that from the town standpoint, they want to make sure that they have separate their money to put into the things in that plan, such as new air conditioning and a new furnace. And we're awaiting the county board approval of the monies for the Thursday openings. Their approval of the fact that they know the town and us are putting that money in for it. So, that's it.
Marina and Marina Fest.
Marina, the minutes are in the packet. We got done the rock work and temporary patch on A, so it's better from a safety and storm standpoint.
Looks really nice.
Yeah, good.
Did a great job. Anything about Marina Fest, or?
That's mine.
That's
Meeting Thursday, the 25th.
Parks. I think there's minutes in there. Personnel is not met. Plan Commission. SBAA.
Louise announced that through the first 4 concerts of the year, attendance is up 20% over last year. She attributes that mainly to the public marketing of the entire concert series promotional schedule as of March 29th this year instead of the middle of June last year. Concession revenue through the first 4 concerts is up 50% to last year. She attributes that to a focus on premium alcoholic beverages. The village bus had 400 people use it over the 4th of July weekend. 90% of that activity was from 5 p.m. till 1 a.m. in the morning. The number 1 most popular route was JJ's to Husby's, Husby's to JJ's.
No surprise.
That's it.
Tourism zone.
There's stuff in the packet that in addition to all that stuff that has always come, I asked Janelle to put some stuff in there about the Administrator Kim Roberts' testimony before the State Ways and Means hearing. And it was regarding VRBO and Airbnb making room tax collection exceedingly difficult. They've essentially removed room tax from a line item on their bills. It's the requirement of the host to add into the nightly rate that tax, which usually winds up just adding it to the state coffers and then the administrative attempt to try and track it down. So it's challenging distributing it all properties. She is wanting to have a property listing or an online listing identification, some form of new identification added to these bills so that rather quickly she can make sure the money's coming and getting then to the people that deserve it.
Wasn't there some movement at the state to work with areas like Door County that has the tourism zone commission? Didn't they make a change at the state level to allow the Airbnbs of the world to pay in based on actual property address rather than?
That not, according to Kim at the meeting, no, that's one of the things she went there to say, we need this.
Okay.
Because without it, this is getting virtually impossible to make sure things get collected properly. So, the only other thing I would mention is, I found it interesting myself, the summer marketing focus, the tourism bureau, the #1 marketing focus is, and dollars focus is advertising on Pandora and Spotify music streaming services targeting women 21 to 34. The #2 main marketing focus of the entire summer is the same streaming services, adults 21 to 34. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah. That's all I have for that one, Dave.
Utilities.
Meeting, or minutes of the June meeting are in the packet. And we did have a July meeting where we approved the, recommended to send to the board the USDA grant information, so.
Okay. I will mention that we also contacted Randy Nesbitt so that he could notify mediation people that, the 2 people that we've assigned to the ongoing utility plant issue. We're waiting for Liberty Grove to specify who their 2 are, and at some point in the near future, we'll probably have a meeting somewhere.
And Mike, they no longer want you at their meetings, huh?
Correct. I did receive an email from the town clerk, well, actually from John Lowry, requesting that I no longer come to their utility meetings. So I pass it on to Janelle, Bo, and then I believe, and Randy. Randy prepared a statement for me to give to them. So that's where we are on that.
Did they say why?
No, there was no forewarning or no. Just said
You
they-
can still go if you choose to, right?
I could go as a citizen, sure.
Have there
They do
been,
not want me
are
there.
are the meetings contentious from the, I mean, not you personally, but as the utility representative?
I've requested at the last meetings I was at, like minutes from the previous meetings and agendas for the next upcoming meetings. They have not provided me with anything I've asked for. They always did before, when Jim Slomsky was the clerk. And as soon as I'm done saying anything, they're more than happy to have me get up and go right away. Because they do follow it right away with their board, you know.
Right.
So,
Should we have a conversation if we would like Mike to go anyway, no matter what their request is? I don't know where that takes place, open, closed, utilities here.
well, I should probably show you that thing from Randy.
We got it.
Okay.
It's attached.
Oh, okay.
We got it.
Yeah.
So,
Can you give me the clip notes?
It's a,
Fairly short.
it's
It's a short
basically,
one.
yeah, it's
You
real
can find
short.
it.
If you just read this, that's what he says Mike should respond as. I'm extremely leery on so many different levels of, and even if you would not have, the opportunity to speak or the right to speak as utilities director, certainly, you just hearing the conversation, that our partner in the utility plant is having certainly is useful and helpful and.
Absolutely.
that's your call. If you want.
I know
me to-
you'd like one less meeting, but.
I mean, if you want me to attend, I'll attend.
Are we billing them when you go to the meeting?
We have never billed them.
Okay. I was just trying to think if there's any, that's the one,
Sorry, that's not accurate. We bill them every time you go to the meeting.
Yeah, but you just, I thought that just started.
No, every time you go to a quarterly meeting, we bill them. They just didn't have meetings for a long time. The Liberty Grove Utility District didn't have meetings
That's
for a
true,
really long time.
yeah, I
There was no
stand
building.
corrected on that, I guess I.
Now they're having meetings every month or every twice a month.
When did we start billing them? That hasn't been forever.
Yeah, it's been a part of the quarterly bills ever since I've been here.
Oh, well, I guess I didn't know what you were
Yeah.
doing.
It may be as simple as that.
It may be as simple as the billing, they don't wanna charge.
Well, I would think it's certainly in the village's best
Yes.
interest to have our utility director there at their meetings to understand what they're discussing concerning parts of our system.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what are they actually gonna do?
Well, unless they're in closed session, he can sit right there and listen to everything they have to say, that's the point, right?
Sure.
So, I would
And they
say,
have to have good reason to go into closed session.
I would say we should have you there.
Well, I'll go there, then, and I haven't done it yet, because then maybe I shouldn't send Randy's response.
It might still be a good thing, I think, to have it in the minutes that they've
Right.
requested you
Yeah.
not be there.
Right.
That if this is something to do with,
Isn't this
Legal
coming really
matters
close to
that-
what we should be enclosed for, because this,
No.
isn't this legal, but aren't we getting legal advice?
well, this hasn't, it's got to do with,
They publicly asked him not to come, they sent a public letter to us. We're simply saying, we want him to go. He doesn't have to give his input, what they asked him to was not provide his report anymore. Okay, fine, he won't provide a report anymore, but he's gonna sit there in the
I was
audience.
saying, and Randy's response, that's what I was referring to, perhaps we shouldn't discuss that, because that's legal advice from, is that not what?
well, if he didn't put in there,
Right,
well, actually, the intent is
This has
that
nothing-
Mike say this.
Right,
Yeah.
this has nothing to do with the legal issue that's ongoing in the background.
Yes, I understand that.
But, and we haven't disclosed this publicly, so,
So we'll talk about,
Yeah, you guys make, I don't care, I'll go, I just want it to be clear that that's what we want.
if you look on page 189 of the utilities, or the, whatever
Minutes?
committee it was, yeah, minutes. Line 32, North Bay Shore Drive laterals. The village attorney is still working on this issue. Somebody needs, from the village office, to talk to Randy on if he's going, I mean, we've been talking about this for 6, 8 months, a year, I have no idea.
Yep.
And he never gets back. Has he forgotten about it? What is going on?
Every time I say something to him, he goes, yeah, it's not, I gotta do that, is what I mean.
Okay, well, somebody then from the village office, other than you,
I'll
needs
do
to
that.
light a fire.
Guess that has been in there a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
okay. Anything else on utilities? Youth Center
Has not been.
has not been, okay.
Oh, no, sorry, I was scrolling. Can I go
Sure,
back?
absolutely.
Okay, page 193.
Oh, okay.
Letter C, Liberty Grove Tour Wastewater Treatment Plant. As per the town's request, a representative of McMahon and Associates did tour the plant, but Scal hasn't received a report from that firm yet. So these were minutes from June 11th. Do we know anything yet?
Have not heard, I have asked Robert Lee whenever I talk to him, and Josh says no, they haven't provided anything to the engineers.
And this
that was
was
part of
done
the
in May,
agreement, right?
right? And this
Yes.
was, they toured in May?
Yes,
Was it May?
yeah, I believe it was.
So they
May.
certainly had more than enough time, more than a,
Right.
Plenty of time.
So we should ask for the report.
somebody needs to ask.
Yep. Bo can pick up the phone and call Liberty Grove.
Talk to Stacy.
Yeah. Anything else on utilities? Youth Center has not met. Okay, we are going to move into executive session. Consider a motion to convene an executive session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.851G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or likely to become involved. Wisconsin statutes 19.851E to deliberate or negotiate purchase of public properties, investment of public funds, or other conduct or conduct other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And Wisconsin statutes 19.851C to discuss personnel and employee benefits. Motion by Lino.
Second?
Roll call. Lino, yes.
Berto, yes.
Duffy, yes?
Yes. Zashki, yes.
Baker, yes.
We're now in a closed session. We'll take a 5-minute stretch and down the hall break.